The fifth chapter of Riot.
Major house party, and when that needle went down on that turntable, that house just became a roar. Swords and tequila.
First album I heard for them was Thunder Steel. Wow. I mean, wow, this is the first album that I've heard probably that from start to finish, just mind-blowing. I never heard anything like that. It has the ballad, it has the power song, it has the intensity, the melody, everything is perfect in that album.
We know how important Aerosmith and Kiss and all these bands were. Ted Nugent, Blue Oyster Cult, but Riot was in there as sort of a second wave, kind of just preceding Van Halen, with these super heavy records, starting with an indie record with this stupid weird seal mascot in 1976, 77.
Legacy of Riot still, lives on with Riot V. Not only were they friends with Mark, but they collaborated with Mark on different eras of the band. And not only are they playing the classics, but they're continuing to write new, fresh material for new generation of fans.
You listen to, Born in America, it takes you right back to playing ping pong in my friend Mark's garage while that's playing in the background. And like I said, Wings of Fire, Promised Land, Gunfighter, the opening chords to Vigilante Killer, Born in America.
Mark Reale was born on June 7th, 1955 in Brooklyn, New York. He was the guitarist, he was the principal songwriter, and he was the driving force behind Riot.
There's a lot to say about Mark.
Yes, originally he wasn't planning on being a musician. Originally, he liked photography. He wanted to make movies. He used to make movies.
First time I met Mark was in grade school, 5th grade, 11 years old. I met him in a hallway. Actually, I ran into him in the hallway. We didn't know each other. But as time went on, we saw more and more of each other in school, and we became aware of the fact that we both had similar interests.
But actually, it's my fault my father's fault, because when Mark was 3 years old, my father bought him a little toy guitar, and he used to sit down and plunk it and make up songs right then and there.
Yeah, he was a natural, right?
Yeah. So then he liked that music, so I bought him a nice red guitar, electric guitar with an amplifier and everything, and I send him for lessons, and that's how we started a band in the basement. Got the kid around the corner playing the drums, and one kid sang, you know.
Was that Peter Bitelli? Was that?
Yeah, Peter Bitelli was the original drummer, and I could prove it because you got to come to that basement in where I live and look at all the holes in the ceiling, because Peter Bitelli used to play his drums and make holes in my ceiling.
Oh, you hit the cymbals and...
Yeah.
We eventually found out that we, want to play music. So it was just really me and him at the beginning. We decided that we need more than 2 people to make a band.
I was living in Brooklyn at the time and looking to join a band. I was 16, and I had put up an ad in a local music store called King James, and I believe it read "Flashy bass player seeks rock band." Peter Bitelli had answered the ad. We kind of hit it off on the phone, and we had a lot of things in common in terms of musical influences and what we wanted to do and what we liked.
And he came over, and he fit. We knew right away that it was going to work. It was me, Mark, and Phil.
So Peter pretty much like the next day came and got me, and we went to Mark's house, and we just jammed, on cover songs, the stuff that we liked and stuff that we were familiar with, some blues stuff that it was like very, very easy, and chatted a lot, and we just really got along. It was as if I was in the band prior to my audition, because it was just such a great camaraderie between the 3 of us.
I came up with the name Riot because Mark and I always watched this TV show called The Honeymooners with Ralph Cramden and Jackie Gleason. It was on every night. They made 39 episodes, and me and Mark watched it religiously. We had a couple of names: The People, Green Tea, we called the band, and this is before Phil. This is just me, Mark, now. So I said to Mark, one of the lines in the show is, Ralph would say to Alice all the time, "You're a riot, Alice." And I just looked at Mark and said, "Why don't we just call the band Riot?" And Mark just looked at me and didn't say a word. And when Mark does that, that means he agrees with you. So that's the way it was, and that's the way it stuck.
The first time I ever heard of the band Riot, it would have been an event called a block party in Brooklyn, where all the families on the block would close off their block and basically have a party. It would have been a weekend. I heard some really cool music and ventured over and saw Mark playing. And it was a 3-piece, and they were playing some just really cool stuff, which was like, wow, who are these guys? So it really blew me away. That was the first time I actually saw them.
Right in there, or is it dry?
Here we are at the venue. Here it is, Riot. Riot at Reggie's in Chicago.
Riot. Playing tonight, couple hours. Drove 5 hours. Saginaw, Michigan. Some other members of the band that you helped get in, right?
The original Guy Speranza, same way. In Brooklyn, in those days, we used to have a lot of block parties. So on weekend I used to go to different block parties to see what's happening, and there was Guy Speranza singing with some little band.
Right.
And I said, there's that handsome young boy, and he sounds terrific. So I went home and I grabbed Mark, and I took Mark to the block party to see him. And I said, you got to get that guy. And he did. He got him. Want to play with our band? Because he made Guy come down the basement and see the band. And that was much better than what he was singing with. So he came with Riot. So that was the beginning.
That's how we got Guy from a block party. He was playing in another band. And, you know, when me and Mark, you know, saw him, we knew right away that he had the voice, he had the look, and we knew somehow, some way, we had to get him to come over to his house, Mark's house, and talk to him about it. You know, come play with our band. After a few meetings in his house, he decided to make the plunge, and he did it. You know, we got him that way.
And every time they played, I would show up and just digging it. And I wound up joining, and we were doing covers. And then I got out of it because I joined another cover band with my buddies. It was an interchangeable type of thing, you know.
And Peter pretty much came up with the idea of, you know, maybe we should write some original material, even if we wrote one or two, and if it went anywhere, fine. If we liked it, fine. If we didn't, we'll just keep at it. Well, nevertheless, we wrote 3 songs.
We recorded our first demo in an off-duty policeman's hobby recording studio on a 4-track. We recorded 3 songs that were never published. I Am the Sheriff, songs you probably don't even know. I have them. One Phil wrote, and another one. We wrote 3.
I, myself, took a TAC reel to reel into Manhattan and met with a booking agent. He gave us a gig. It was a Tuesday night. We were opening for a band called the Brats, and one thing led to another. We were playing Max's, and then I went and we got us a gig at CBGB's, and I had gotten us a gig at Club 82. But at the time, there were compilation records being made, meaning that Max's Kansas City were coming out with the best of Max's, all the bands that played at Max's. And CBGB's was doing the same, and Club 82, where we were playing often as well, they jumped on the bandwagon. So we were going to be part of this compilation, and we believed the Dictators were going to be on that, or are on that, and several other bands that played there frequently like us. When that record was, when that idea, that concept of all the bands were brought to Green Street Studios, Billy Arnell and Steve Loeb, they decided to pull Riot off of that compilation project, and they offered us our own deal.
They wanted us to play with them, to have exclusive rights to us, and then after we wrote more songs, enough songs for our first album, you know, not the 3 songs that the Cop, they weren't good enough, so they never made it.
They thought we had something special. They really liked Guy, and they had their own record company. It was all inclusive: management, publishing, studio, and label. So we then negotiated and talked about, you know, making a record on Firesign, and so we did.
When I first got into the band back in 1975, what happened was I was a local musician, and the thing to do back then to get into a band was to put your name in this little file cabinet that they used to have on 57th Street in New York City. It was called the Musicians Referral Service. And what you would do, you'd pay $25, you'd put your picture, your influences, you stick it in a file with 1,000, 10,000 other guitar players. I had my name and my picture in there for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and Mark and Guy called me and asked me to come down for an audition.
Louis came from Queens. He came down, he looked good, he played good, and right away we knew we wanted him in the band.
Yeah, my first impression of Mark and Guy, like any other thing, you know, I was a little nervous to see them, but they seemed to be pretty nice guys, you know, regular people from Brooklyn. I was from Queens. When we started playing, I realized that these guys have some pretty good talent. We were very young at the time. We were only about maybe 22 years old.
We're in Westland, basically Detroit Rock City, to play a show. If you heard about it, we're here in town in Detroit. We're going to be rocking out.
If I throw this against the windshield, will Todd get mad, do you think? What do you think?
I dare you.
You're going to dare me to do it?
I dare you.
What do you think, Donnie?
I double dog dare you.
Dude, man, don't do that shit.
Get his reaction, come on. Todd.
Don't throw it in my bag. I'll throw it out the window in about 2 seconds.
All right, cut. That was a good one.
When I go back and listen to Rock City now, I sit and listen, I'm like, wow, 77. It's just like, it's one of those albums. It's kind of like Van Halen 1. When you listen to it, and you're just like, wow, wow, really? They did that then, you know? So I put that Rock City album right in that same camp. It's just one of those albums that you hear and you listen to Overdrive and some of those songs, you're just like going, wow.
Recording the first album was good. All the songs were good. It didn't take that long. It was mostly during the cold weather in the wintertime with a lot of snow outside.
It was really exciting at the time. You know, we were going into a full-on 24-track studio. We were really primed very well. We were very excited. And I think the playing and the excitement was top at that point.
It was late hours. We were all living at home still. We didn't have any money. All the money that we made from playing out and the record, Billy and Steve kept, because they said we owed that to them, because studio time was $125 an hour, and we weren't paying for anything. We were recording in the 16-track studio that used to be John Lennon's studio, and anything that we made, they kept.
The demo that was made before I got into the band, which was Warrior and I believe Desperation, or Angel, I should say. Those were done before I got into the band. So there was 3 songs on that album I did not play on.
The lows were, you know, having Phil ejected in the middle of the album. Billy and Steve zoomed in on Mark to as the leader, say, look, this is what we're going to do. They didn't talk to all of us. All 5 of us didn't bond together and say, look, we know we got something good. There's going to be people out there that want what we have. And we didn't do that. We weren't close on that.
The lows for me personally was the contractual agreements that came about. I became a little disgruntled about all of that. So that's basically, it turned into like, well, you know, I parted ways with them due to contractual situations that might have not been very pleasing to me and to the rest of the band, but they were just very excited about making a record. So that was great. They did, and they went on, and I just stayed on the New York scene and worked in a lot of other bands that led me to other things. That's how I sort of parted ways. It was all admirable. It was fine, you know, and it all worked out well in the end for everybody.
We were just so anxious to play music, and you know, we didn't know the dirty business end of it. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. If we had it to do over again, we wouldn't sign anything. We would have negotiated with them. And if they would have said no, we're not doing it, then we would have known that they're not right for us, and we would have went to somebody else we could trust.
It was crazy because, you know, they wanted us to sign the record deal the way it was, and they go, well, you know, guys, go out in the hall and you know, talk about it. So what happened? We're out there, and I said, guys, we can't sign the record deal like this. It's all one-sided. They own everything. They owned us for the next 20 years. And, you know, Mark is pacing back and forth. Guy and Jimmy Iommi, the bass player, and I were talking. He goes, yeah, Mark goes, we can't sign this like this. He goes, you know, what are we going to do? So, you know, Mark starts kind of like saying, yeah, you know, but I trust these guys, and we could sign the contract now and worry about it later, and you know, this and that, and you know, I was like, no, man, we can't sign it like this. We can't do that. I was totally against it. That's probably another reason why I was probably out of the band later on, because I guess they saw me as a troublemaker. But I was just being cautious with the band, as you know, as it was. So we went back into the office, and Mark said, we're going to sign the contract. And I was like, my heart just sank. Guy signed it. Jimmy signed it. Peter signed it. I signed it. And that was the beginning of the end for the band.
I had my doubts. Louis had his doubts, and Guy had his doubts. We all did. We didn't like what they were doing. But we did it anyway. That was mistake number 2. Phil was number 1 because we gave over everything to them. Power of attorney, everything. So Louis was right. Louis was skeptical, and we all were, but we didn't do jack shit about it. We were stupid. We made a big mistake.
In a general sense, that first Riot album was really well recorded, and that's a legacy of Steve Loeb and the label he put together and recording in Green Street Recordings. Really, really cool, modern heavy metal for the time, and we were very surprised, and it's kind of an indie record. So Riot quickly had a reputation based on that.
Todd Michael Hall.
About to go on stage tonight. Curtain's about to come open. Cheers from Detroit Rock City. Shine on. JL.
Thomas from the band Halloween. My Riot story is that one of the first cover tunes we ever did back in the 80s was Swords and Tequila, and rocking with Riot ever since. Love them.
Okay, the first time I listened to Riot was at their house with his oldest brother. He introduced me to Riot, and I've been hooked ever since. I was like 14 years old, and I loved them ever since.
The recording process for Rock City, the recording went very, very fast. It wasn't like we sat there and did take after take after take, because when we did the album, we were very, very rehearsed. So it was very, very simple. Maybe 1 or 2 takes, and we had it down. The songs on the album, as far as the credits go, I never really got written credit on basically anything on the album. What had happened is I was promised, by Mark, that anything that we did together, of course, I would get credit for. And Mark and I used to sit in his room, and we would create these parts for different songs. We'd kind of like listen to some stuff, and we'd say, that's pretty good, that's pretty good. Then we'd collaborate, put it together. And I had some ideas, he had ideas, and we came out with a lot of different tunes that some of them didn't go on the album. They actually went on the second album. The idea for the seal was. I guess one of the producers, I guess his girlfriend or something, was an artist, and she came up with this baby seal thing. And what happens when they put it on the album cover, it was like the baby seals were getting back at the human race for clubbing him to death. That's basically what it was. It didn't make any rhyme or reason, but I guess and they had the explosion of the New York City going on fire and stuff.
They got us a gig with Journey up in upstate New York, an outdoor concert. And we opened for them.
Neil Schoen from Journey stopped me and grabbed me by the shoulders and said, hey man, you're a pretty good guitar player. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm saying to myself, he thinks I'm a good guitar player. So this guy was kind of like, admired so much for what he did. They had a hit album with the Wheel in the Sky tour, which was the tour we were on.
And after we played with Journey, they decided that they don't want Louis in the band now, like they did to Phil. So that's all I know, and they left them there.
The next morning I woke up, and there was nobody around. The band was gone, everybody was gone. The next day I got a call saying that I was out of the band. I got a call from the manager that my services were no longer needed.
What was the official statement of reason why?
They never told me the reason why. They said, you know, it's a time part company. He goes, you know, we feel that it's better that, you know, we go on our own way and you go on your own way. So that's what it was. I never got an explanation. And to this day, none of the guys in the band, all the guys I've talked to, knew what the real reason was.
When it came time for Narita and Lou and Riot parted ways, I wound up coming back into the band. A friend of mine, Jimmy, who was the bass player, who I played with for quite a bit before that, he said, hey man, we should just get Rick, you know, it'd be perfect. And Mark and I were friends, and I just came into I just fell right into it again. And it just, I had become a better guitar player, and it just fell into place.
So Mark really didn't like ads. He didn't like big, long, drawn-out things. So then Rick already knew all the songs. He was there every night at rehearsal, so he naturally fit right in. Okay, you're in the band now.
Rock City sold 100,000 records in Japan. Okay, back then. How many albums do you think it sold in Canada? How many albums do you think it sold in Germany? How many albums do you think it sold in London, in England, and the rest of the all over the world? There's got to be let's say 500,000 records. Okay, to this day it's being sold. We haven't seen one red cent.
Mark wanted to be the top guy. He didn't want any competition from anybody. You know, Louis was a good guitar player, but Mark wanted to be the head honcho. He didn't want to share the spotlight with anybody. I'm sorry to say. It was just very sad because this was my friend that I grew up with, and as time went on, because of Billy and Steve now, they got into Mark's head and totally changed him from that person that I knew to something that they wanted him to be. And that's one of the regrets that I have, to see that happening before my eyes. It really was terrible.
Riot was on Attic Records with us back in the early 80s, and when we first got signed to Attic, they let us go through their stock room and pick any records that we wanted, and sure enough, we pulled out the In the Read album, which was fantastic. What a bizarre cover with a seal on the front. Very, very weird. And we thought, wow, what's this? Took it home and listened to it. It's like, wow, this is great. And the rest is history. It's great. I love that album. Still do.
Narita, those recordings were done in a studio that really never recorded a heavy rock band. They were used to doing jingles and probably some very soft pop stuff. So we would actually bring records in and say, hey, you know, we got to get the drums to sound like this. We have to get the guitars to sound like this. We should be recorded like this. Those were things that delayed the recording process.
So the highs were better songs, better production, better engineer, and the lows were not being able to do anything, have any input on anything that we could sound like, you know.
But as far as getting material down, it was pretty quick. Most of my solos were like all first take solos. Mark sometimes would do quite a few to and try to pick the best, but yeah, everybody works differently.
We played with Hagen, we played with Neil Young, we played with Journey, we played music festivals, we played Boston, we played all over. Fan reception was good as it was for the first album, if not better.
And that's how the whole thing kind of started in America for us, because we had been getting some action overseas before then. And so really we did break out of San Antonio in America. So it's always been kind of like, you know, a home away from home.
I would dig up some of these cactuses, but I don't have the time, and afraid I'm going to get bit by a rattlesnake. So, you know, hey, Sarah, Sarah.
We first received airplay in San Antonio, and when we first went to play there, we were actually mobbed by fans. We couldn't believe it.
When I was a youngster, I told Mark, and I still have it, I told him that I got his autograph. When I was in San Antonio, Texas, a DJ, a big heavy metal DJ named Joe Anthony, he ruled the airways and he broke younger, newer bands like Budgie, Lakes Diamond, Moxie, you know, stuff like that. And Riot was one of them. I remember going to school here in Tokyo Rose or Overdrive, and I just loved it. I went to the local record store and bought the vinyl. And they came through town and played with Sammy Hagar, and they had an in-store when they had in-stores at the record places, record hall, and I went, and that's when I met him, and I got all of them to sign my record and stuff. And I loved it. It was one of my favorite records. And then when Narita followed, I had that record within the first week of release. I had them autograph that too.
So then we played, we went back home, and then we took a break like for 2 weeks. And then I see Rick on the street. He tells me the band broke up. I go, what do you mean the band broke up? What did we do? So to this day, I don't know what happened. Another mystery. I wasn't told nothing. I wasn't even given. I had to find out from Rick. Nobody called me. After all these years of spending these years with Mark, this is what happened. I was so insulted that I never asked, and nobody even volunteered to tell me. You know, if the band is broken up, Rick's still in the band. Jimmy's not in the band anymore. Jimmy's had enough. So they got a bass player and a drummer, and supposedly the story is the band broke up and then they decided to put it back together again, but not with me and not with Jimmy. They got somebody else. You know, so I don't know to this day if that's Mark's doing or Billy and Steve's doing. I'm sure Billy and Steve had something to do with it because of what they did to Phil and what they did to Louie. You can see a pattern here. So that's their thing, you know, just oust people and don't give them a reason. That's the reason. That's the way they, you know, that's the way they do things.
And then of course Fire Down Under, the last of the big three. I mean, that goes without saying. Almost everybody in heavy metal is pretty much influenced by it, including myself.
But then, of course, the big reputation was built on the Capitol albums, Narita and Fire Down Under, and from that point on, they were legendary.